Hey, I'm Dan Qualls. I'm the head of campus here at the University of Machias, and we are welcoming the Chancellor on his visit. And I'd like to introduce our president, President Joan Freeney-Mundy.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joan Freeney-Mundy, the president here at the University of Maine at Machias, which is a regional campus of the University of Maine. And I'm delighted to be back here with a beautiful ride over this morning and to introduce our Chancellor, Chancellor Dannel Malloy, who is conducting his fall 2020 Keep It Up tour to talk to us about how the fall is going and most importantly, to hear your questions, your concerns, your suggestions for keeping learning going and keeping our campuses open and available to students as we go forward. So Chancellor Malloy, welcome.
Well, thank you, President. It's great to be with you and to be on the campus again. Actually, driving over, I was reflecting what has transpired since I was last on the campus. I think I was here in February. The roads were heaving. As you came in the main road, lots of trees over wires, and we didn't know the pandemic was going to play out quite the way it ended up playing out in March. Here we are so many months later. And so let me begin by saying thank you to every staff person, every faculty member, every student who has participated in getting us this far into this semester successfully. Obviously, we're concerned about how everyone's doing and understand that things are difficult under these circumstances. It's hard to teach in these circumstances. It's hard to make those personal contacts that so many people rely on. But I know that you're doing the absolute best you can and delivering a good education to our students. And so I very much appreciate the hard work, the extra effort that's going in to allow this to happen. Obviously, the pandemic has caused a great tumult in how we do things at our system, every system in the nation, and every college and university, and quite frankly, pre-K through 12 program in the nation is equally challenged. And we worry about whether we're doing everything we can. And so I'm happy to hear any suggestions or ideas on how we move forward in the next semester or any adjustments that you feel should be made. I have to say, however, that if someone had told me that we could have had the level of success that we've had in as few cases thus far, and I knock on wood, if someone had said this, 3 or 4 months ago, I would have thought it impossible. And yet, because Maine has done what it's done, because the population has complied so very extensively with the guidance of the Maine CDC and other guidance that's been given, here we are, more than halfway to Thanksgiving and still operating at the kind of level that we had hoped we'd be able to do. Having said that, I'm happy to answer or talk about any of those issues. Obviously, again, since I was last here, we did have positive movement by our primary accreditor, NECHI, with respect to unified accreditation. Very grateful for the conversations that I had on this campus and every campus concerning that subject. I think our proposal to NECHI was better because of that impact, the impact of those discussions and ideas that came forward and concerns, quite frankly, that came forward. And I'm particularly happy that our principles document is specifically referred to by NECHI and our own board with respect to helping define unified accreditation as we move forward. I think it's a good tool to have available to us in these difficult economic times. So I want to happy to talk about that as well, or any other subject matter that may come up. Now, I will warn you, given my primary calling previously, that is in politics and government, if there are insufficient questions, I have other speeches that I can just call upon and give. So you might want to ask questions or have a conversation with me. I would very much appreciate that. I don't know whether anything's come in yet.
Yep. Do you have access to these, Joan?
No, I'm not saying.
Okay. So we do have a couple of questions coming in, and the first one is about spring semester. In the last town hall, I believe that was with that was probably with the president. In the last town hall, it was said that when spring classes are posted, which is coming up, that we should not expect changes. That was also said about fall, and then classes changed many times right at the last minute. So it sounds like this question is looking for some assurances going into the spring.
Well, it's played out somewhat differently each campus, based on conditions, based on who was available, and quite frankly, based on the fact that it was the first time anyone had ever done anything like this. So I understood ultimately that some adjustments had to be made. Obviously, we're planning on beginning the next semester the same way we began this semester. And quite frankly, I have made this very clear to all of our presidents and provosts, is that we should plan next September the same way we opened this past September. I would be very happy if we could return to something approaching normal, but for planning purposes, it is very important that we continue to think that the pandemic will be with us for at least 12 months longer, and we be ready to provide the educational product that we do provide in much the same manner that we have been working through this semester. Now, having said that, we get better at this stuff. People who have thought that they weren't going to be able to handle teaching online, or students who thought they weren't going to be able to handle learning online have adjusted. Now, it's not perfect, and people crave, I think, a return to the old normal as opposed to the new normal. But we need to be ready and planning for the adjustments that will be required to be made for us to continue the work we're doing. That's not very specific to this campus, and I apologize for that, Joan.
I'll chime in, but Dan also should. I will just say that it is likely that, as I said, once we get things settled in for next semester, we won't be changing. And it's as the Chancellor says, right? We are learning as we go. And so faculty who agreed to teach in one modality as they got into their teaching and watched how it was working, naturally might see some ways that combining that with other modalities or adding some interesting adaptations would be necessary and would help to improve the experience. At the same time, of course, we couldn't predict exactly where our students would be or how they would want to be engaged with faculty, and whether classroom participation would be something that they would embrace and be able to do. So we're learning every single day this semester, and we are hoping very much to have a much clearer picture of what these modalities mean and what a faculty member is committing to as they take one on, and then do our best to hold with those so that students can plan and expect what they're going to be getting. And Dan can tell you even more about what that looks like here.
Yeah, and so we're learning a lot of lessons from the fall currently as we speak in utilizing those lessons to plan for the spring. So it looks like the spring is going to be much more stable, depending on the pandemic, of course, but in terms of curriculum, like the Chancellor and the President said, the faculty are now, some of them who had never taught online before are now becoming to be old pros. But we will still, moving forward, we're still going to try to find support for faculty to make their different modalities as efficient as they can. It's just something that we're going to just keep working on as we go through this. I would say that the questions you can send us can be put in the chat, or you can send them through umaine.alerts@maine.edu. You can send them either way. I have a few more spring questions. This one is actually a UMaine campus specific question. It's so this might be more up Jones alley. Will spring semester also have a few food options available? The food pantry isn't the same as being able to go to the union and grab something to eat with fare bucks.
Thanks. So it is a UMaine specific question. We definitely are assessing how things are going this semester. There are options, of course, at the union, but we may be needing to look at the hours and the extent of availability, all of that currently under review. So please do keep letting us know at UMaine, specifically how things are going relative to these options. We've had this question before. We'll get it into our FAQs and get some responses out.
I can say with food services here on our campus that we did have last week a team come down from Sodexo that did student panels, and I really appreciate all the. I heard there's a pretty good student turnout for the panels, so I really appreciate the feedback that you're giving our food services. This one looks like current semester. Yeah, this is now. Okay, so we've had questions. This is a question that we've heard before. We've had questions last semester and this semester about tuition costs when many courses are online. Should parents and students expect a tuition break when there are fewer in classes?
I'll take a stab at answering that. The reality is that our charge, our cost, what we charge for a course is very much tied to what it costs us to stand up an institution, to have faculty, to have staff, to run and separate apart on the room and board, to have buildings available. So our cost structure has only gone up, not down. For instance, the pandemic, probably when everything is said and done, will have cost us about $80 million. Just testing for this semester and next semester will have cost us somewhere between $12 and $14 million on a system-wide basis. That higher number reflects lost opportunities, payments to people who were not being able to be maximized, research put on hold or delayed. So our cost structure is substantially greater today than it was at this time last year, which makes reducing a course cost or charge or tuition very, very problematic. Well before I got here, the printing press that produced money for our system dried out and was no longer functioning. The reality is that's the situation we are in. Of course, we're also going into a 2-year budget cycle at the legislature. We'll be presenting those budgets when required. But it's a difficult situation that we're in the midst of in this pandemic. I don't know how else to answer that, other than to say that we need to raise the monies necessary to continue our mission. And I probably am more concerned about what will happen in the legislature on the next 2-year budget, understanding that much of the money that comes to the system is in a single line item, which makes us a rather big target at 200 million plus for total contribution by the state, not including capital dollars.
I've got a quick, oh, go ahead.
I'm just going to add a little bit to this one.
Sure.
In addition to the completely unanticipated and amazingly large expenses that are associated with the pandemic, we have across the system, I believe, and certainly here at Machias and at UMaine, done our very best to continue all of the services that are a normal part of supporting the academic infrastructure. Student mental health counseling, library services, recreational activities, a whole array of ways in which we want to be sure our students are supported through the college experience. Much of that, of course, to support their academic engagement, including tutoring and help rooms and a number of other services.
I have a follow-up to that one, to the state funding. So this is for you, Chancellor.
Sure.
Are you confident that the state funding is going to be consistent moving forward, or do you think that these pressures from the pandemic on the state budget is going to actually present a threat to the UMaine system funding?
Yeah, I would, I hope for the best and plan for the worst. And I think this budget downturn or this economic downturn is very different than 2008 in most states because many of our states committed to expanding healthcare, which means that a larger percentage of any state's budget that did that is contractually and legally bound to support healthcare, which means that the portions of a budget that can actually be impacted are fewer than previously in the 2008-2009 timeframe, for those of you who remember what it was like. At the same time, in the state of Maine, we know that our industries have been particularly impacted, whether it's agriculture or the lobstering industry or other industries, but most particularly tourism has created a rather large hole in the state's collections, and I'm not sure that that's going to be a quick turnaround. Again, I'll remind you, I'm the guy who was saying that we should plan that next September is very much like the September that we just had. In that situation, I think the state is going to be under tremendous pressure. Now, I don't have a crystal ball that tells us what the federal government may or may not do. And obviously we have an election, and that'll be fallout of that election. And some people may want to go in one direction and helping states through the crisis. Some other folks may not want to go in that direction. That also is an unknown. So, I'll continue to hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
I have a curriculum question that I think a lot of students are probably relating to here at the University of Machias. This is coming from a senior. A lot of seniors are frustrated, not feeling prepared. They're having feelings of unpreparedness when they graduate due to the lack of hands-on experiences that they would normally get. So, but not just because of this semester, but sometimes maybe even their programs in general. Because some programs like for example, the education program, where by their junior year, they're doing, internships in the public schools, getting, on-site training. So what kind of advice would we have for students who want more hands-on experience from their programs?
I'm going to look for help from the two of you on this one, but I'll give you my answer as well. These are difficult times. We are learning things about ourselves that many of us would have hoped we would not have had to learn about ourselves. I believe that this graduating class, in some senses, will have experiences that well prepare them for the challenges of life in the business world or in the not-for-profit arena or in general life skills. Yeah, there's something that's been taken away, and that's that touch, that personal experience on a broader basis supplied in a classroom or in a hospital or in a internship, or quite frankly, by being able to be in a classroom and have as robust a conversation as you would like to have. Having said that, that doesn't mean you're not learning, and it certainly doesn't mean that you're not being prepared. I suspect, and I'll go out on a limb, that in many ways you will be better prepared for the challenges that are going to come at you for the rest of your life than you might have otherwise been prepared if you had not had to go through these very difficult circumstances. I want to get back to normal as soon as we can, but I think what's important is that you finish your program, that you're in a position to graduate, and you find a way to weave your current experience as preparatory for the rest of your life, including your working life. I think a student who can make that argument in an interview or in a letter or a telephone conversation is going to be far better prepared than one who is not ready to do that. I'll open it up to my colleagues.
What a great answer, Chancellor. I mean, I think that part of being able to do that well means tracking how this is going for you, making, keeping a log, understanding what you're learning that you actually didn't expect to learn before this all happened. I'll say that as the parent of 3 children who are K through 12 teachers, experienced teachers nonetheless, they are finding themselves in completely uncharted territory. So their resilience, their ability to be creative, their ability to be flexible and change direction, all of those things are what's making them work things out right now as teachers. And I can imagine this in other professional fields where the clinical experiences that you might have had even last year would be really very different than the reality in these settings today. So we'll keep listening to these. It's important to hear these concerns because we'll do what we can to add in experiences. For example, again, thinking education, maybe there's more that we can do to help our prospective teachers learn what it is like in a classroom that is running at K-12 with hybrid and remote and in class all at the same time. I mean, we should be looking at the current practice right now in schools, in hospitals, in healthcare professions, and helping you connect to that. And we'll keep at it, particularly in the next semester.
This is a financial aid question. How is the new financial aid with University of Maine, how is it going to change the student experience? And I believe that's referring to students here at the University of Maine at Machias.
You want to start? I can.
The way that if you don't mind, I would just, first thing on the top of my head is that you'll put in the students will put in a different number. Really, that's the biggest change, and making sure that it's the correct number. And we've tried to be pretty clear on what number you're supposed to put in when you're applying, fill out the FAFSA fund and all that. I think if your funds were dispersed from University of Maine at Machias, University of Maine, University of Maine at Augusta, whoever's dispersing your funds, as a student, I would just be glad, I would check to make sure I had this is the right funds that I'm supposed to get. But other than that, if the experience, I don't think would be that much different.
No, I was on a call earlier today around the planning for this. Absolutely, everyone trying to be sure it feels seamless to all of the Machias students that the impact on your actual aid will not be felt in any kind of way, but rather it's what head of campus calls says. It's about making sure we get the right number on the FAFSA forms.
I cannot believe we're this deep into this and we're just now getting some COVID questions.
Okay.
So here we go, back to COVID-19. So the first question is, what is the plan for the spring semester in COVID-19 testing?
Again, I'll relate to some of the things I've said previously. It will be much like our September opening, although dates have not, when students will be brought back to each campus, I'm not sure have been announced, but a test for anyone coming to Maine from out of state, either being prepared within 72 hours at where they were, or a test to be administered here. Any residential student will have to be tested again to establish a baseline. And from there on, we'll have a play out very similar to the one that we're currently exercising. And that is that we'll be testing upwards of 2,000 people on an ongoing basis to give us an appropriate read of the situation in our system. 3 of our campuses, we are able to test sewage for levels of the virus. And that may actually end up being expanded to some additional campuses as we're looking for different ways that we could do that, working with the communities in which we're located. So we'll have that ongoing screening, ongoing 7-10 day waves of testing, and several tests to open up, presumably much like we did in September.
I would add that our Dean of Students, Marty Kaler, is our testing coordinator. And in my meeting with her this morning, she was talking about we're in the process of planning for the spring. And so just keep an eye out for any information coming from the Dean of Students. Here's continuing on with health and safety. There is a lot of information on the website about testing, about COVID-19, but some of my students are still confused. I think we need a very simple one-page document that goes through what to do if you feel unwell. This is more of a suggestion than a question.
Sure, I will take the suggestion. Again, I think we should have a good, first of all, we have a program that people can participate, answer a few questions, and it will tell you what you should do. That's available. If you're unsure of what to do in those circumstances, we need to do a better job. And so we'll take note of the question and the reasons for the question, and we'll attempt to address that. If you don't feel well, you should stay at home. If you don't feel well and you have certain symptoms, which are listed, you should get tested. One of the great things about Maine is testing is readily available to people in Maine. not just through our own program, but on a broader basis. Having said that, Washington County is a little bit behind in that regard, and we are having discussions with Maine CDC on how we might help impact that and make more testing available to the county.
Can I just
Sure.
add two quick things on that? One is that we have developed at Humane, and we can circulate it and make sure that it is here, sort of a Q&A sheet for faculty to use, or when a student says this happened or that happened, kind of what the faculty member can advise, and that we should add to the resources as the Chancellor describes that we need to have as well. And then the other thing would be that the contact tracing that goes on in collaboration with Maine CDC and then our individual campuses is well established now. And so if you feel you have been exposed and so forth, you will hear from contact tracers. I mean, they are working hard to make sure that the people who need to be contacted are being contacted.
Pretty easy to find on online is the Clippers Care and the Black Bear Care plans. Both of those plans are very easy to find, and they are laid out specifically for students, explaining all of this in I think just a couple of pages. This next question is a pop quiz, apparently. So,
Okay.
Pop quiz. How do you tell COVID symptoms from the allergy, cold, flu, etc.?
It's a very difficult thing to do. It's one of the reasons that we are urging people to get a flu vaccine. And if you haven't gotten it, please get one as soon as possible, because it's going to become very complicated when we have to start isolating people because they have flu, anticipating that that might be COVID instead. So one gigantic thing that every staff member, faculty member, and student could do is to go get your flu shot. And remember, the flu season runs at least until April or May of next year. So anything you could do to help us in that regard would be helpful. Obviously, if you're showing that there are similar, many of the symptoms are similar. There are different ones, but many are similar. And I think in those situations, the only way to really determine that is to have a test. And that's why we are working with Maine CDC to make testing more readily available in Washington County, and why we have adjustments available to us in our own testing strategy, both this semester and next semester, to allow for that situation should it arise. I think that's the full answer. Get a flu shot, please.
Can departments, and I'm thinking faculty, can departments bring in guest speakers to their classes that would discuss what types of jobs could potentially be available and what kind of skills and qualifications would be required?
Personally, I don't know why that couldn't be done. Certainly on a distance basis, it could be done, and I think that that's a discussion for you to have on a local basis on your campus. We are trying to limit visits on campus to people who otherwise would not regularly be on campus, so staff, faculty, and students. There may be exceptions to that, and certainly doing that on a distance basis, I presume would be okay, but you've got to check with your campus boss.
That sounds like a great idea to me.
It's a terrific idea.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one. Here's a funding question that you've probably heard in the last week. This is probably going to be a recent memory one. Will UMM be receiving any of the money from this very generous Alphon Foundation donation?
The answer to that is yes. I hope it will and anticipate it will. There is, remember, this Alphon gift is in different baskets. Some of it having to do with Division I athletics at the University of Maine. So take that out. That's a very large portion of the total, but there are other dollars. There's a statewide engineering college envisioned, and hopefully building better cooperation with all of our campuses, allowing people to change direction while they're students, or to get to where they need to be accepted into an engineering program at presumably one of the other locations or on a distance basis. There's another tranche of money really around student success, I should say retention and success. What is success? That's graduation. What is retention? It's you're going to be back next semester. That's about $20 million from the Alphons. We need to raise $25 million to fully access those dollars. I would imagine that some of that money would come to this campus to support, again, retention and success goals. And what does that mean? That can mean more internships. It can mean different types of learning experiences. It could have a lot of different meaning. But I think one of the things that we're talking about, particularly on retention and success, is making sure that students are having experiences early enough in their undergraduate career, hopefully their freshman year, to understand what it is, the goal they've set for themselves, whether that makes a continuing sense for them, and to give them a work or research opportunity in that arena. We know statistically that students having that experience, wherever they are more likely to be retained and more likely to be successful. Those dollars presumably would be coming to this campus in some allotment. I'm leaving one out. Main Center Ventures, which is really this Main Center Graduate Center, which really is this complex of a cross-section of institutions, the law school, the Muskie School down in southern Maine, as well as the introduction of our MBA program, which now has 326 students, up from about 150 just a few years ago, and looking to grow that program well in excess of 400 students in an MBA program in the not too distant future, including 40 additional students arriving to participate in that, participating in that program as early as January, and potentially introducing graduate engineering to that complex, which would be in Portland, presumably, and I certainly support it on the campus of the University of Southern Maine. Lots of ways to connect all of our institutions to those offerings at that institution as well. So 3 tranches, engineering, a very substantial amount of money being given and having to be raised. The Graduate Center, a substantial amount of money being committed, $15 million on an operational basis. And up to $40 million participation on a build out of a physical infrastructure after we meet certain tests that the Alphons have laid out. And as I said, retention and success.
Can I just add on that, on the student success, as the Chancellor was talking about experiences in the early part of a student's college career to help them get a sense of what their career pathway might actually entail. The notion of a research experience or some sort of a work experience or a field experience. I have to say that UMaine Machias is really very strong at that kind of work already. And so I could imagine a way that Machias becomes a key partner in that piece of the grant as almost a professional development site, a model that could begin to take its opportunities and share them across the system and help us learn how to do this in other places.
Let me also add, thank you for doing that, and I'll add, because you gave me a chance to think about my answer a little bit further. But we will be rolling out an implementation plan for how to approach these dollars that have been committed. Part of that is how do we raise the matching dollars required, but there will be representatives of this campus on committees working on answering in further detail the question that was just asked. And making sure that that these dollars are in fact benefiting all of our campuses.
It looks like we have about less than 2 minutes, and I've got a few questions left. And if we don't answer these questions, please email them to I guess that same email address.
Yes.
We'll try to get these answers to you. But I think we have time for one more about campus safety. Could we address the safety concerns surrounding a complete lack of security on campus here at UML? And I don't know if you guys, I think I probably know that one probably the best. So We did not have a security officer last. We last had a safety officer. And so when that person resigned, it did leave like a safety concern in terms of their duties, right? So we've asked the Sheriff's Department and the Machias Police Department to help fill that void. We've also sent student workers who were trained to do some of those roles at the University of Maine. Prescott has a student like safety officer program. So we've done some things. It's not a complete void, but the big plan is to team up with the town of Machias and AOS 96, and for us to all share basically a resource officer. And so the pandemic blew that conversation right out of the water, but it has started back up, and we will. I'll definitely keep you posted on how that develops.
Keep me posted too.
And we may have just 30 seconds. Let's see how this is helping students with access. How are you going to help students who may not have internet access when classes go all online after Thanksgiving? And staff in faculty may also live rurally, so that they may not have stable internet access as well.
Well, we have, in the spring, we set up 200 locations where people could access. That doesn't mean it's at everyone's home, but there was a place that if someone had the ability to get to, that they could have access. I don't have a wand that I can wave that will instantly make sure that people have in their personal homes the devices or the bandwidth to secure that. So we are continuing to work on that and doing quite a bit of work on that. David Demers, who heads up that operation for the system, has been in constant contact with people around the system at all the campuses, attempting to do the best that we can to make that available. It will not be perfect. It may require transportation to a location that can be carried out at. Somehow we got through the spring situation and are getting through this situation with many of our students not in a classroom. On the other hand, I'm well aware that it will be difficult and cause some changes. Great. Well, thank you. I think we've used all our time up. Again, let me end where I began. To students, faculty, and staff, for your tremendous commitment to higher education. Thank you for everything you're doing. Have a great day.